what I did every single morning. I'd wake up and I'd start running. And lately I've kind of had that running bug again. Just because of everything that's been going on, there's just something peaceful and meditative about running. Turns out this morning, my coach, my CrossFit coach, had planned quite a bit of running into the workout. So there was at least a mile of a run with 400-meter sprints. And as I'm running this morning, I'm thinking about my past experience in that sport. And folks, I am slow this morning. I mean, I am struggling. And this is not long distance. This is 400 meters. And I kept thinking to myself, why am I struggling so much? I've done half marathons. I've done sprint triathlons. I am just not doing what I need to do to run. And then I remembered the very basic, obvious, but very important aspect of running is that the best way to get better in running and the best way to improve is just to run. The reason why I haven't been doing well in running is because I haven't been running at all. Now, a lot of what I'm going to tell you today is going to be simple, but it's not easy. And we're going to get into some pretty deep complexities in teaching and speaking. So the purpose of today is to give you some powerful speaking skills that you can apply virtually and in person. I want to start by diving into a presentation that I've prepared. Now, I spend at least 6-7 hours preparing this PowerPoint, and I've rehearsed it over and over and over and over again. So my request of you all is I'm gonna share my screen in just a moment, and then I'm gonna give this presentation. It's probably around 5 or 6 minutes, and then I want your honest feedback about how I did. Can I get a thumbs up? Is that a good plan? Okay, here's my presentation, and I'm gonna present on storytelling and speaking. Okay, sharing my screen. Here we go. Everybody see the storytelling and speaking page? Excellent. Hello, my name is Erik Dominguez, and I am here to talk about storytelling and speaking. Why you are here? You will want to improve your storytelling. You want to improve your speaking. You want to use storytelling and speaking in your business. Next slide. About me, I am a speaker. I am a professional speaker and have been for almost 20 years. I'm an educator speaking on speaking, and I am a public speaking and storytelling coach. That's me in the picture. Storytelling concept number 1. Let's dive right in. Identifiable characters. Stories need identifiable characters. We need to be able to relate to the characters. If we don't relate to the characters, we don't relate to the story. Storytelling concept number 2. Authentic emotion. Speakers need to have authentic emotion. Authentic emotion means that a speaker is not hiding or covering up their intentions. Authentic emotions also means that the story should be complete or be complete in emotions. Otherwise, it becomes a group therapy session. That could be bad. Storytelling concept number 3, a significant moment. Storytelling needs to have a significant moment. A significant moment is a turning point or a way by which the identifiable characters overcome the challenge. Significant moments need significant language. Storytelling concept number 4, specific details. Storytelling needs specific details. Specific details give credibility to the story. Specific details do not mean trailing off to other parts or descriptions that are too long. Follow the steps and checklist. Does your story have identifiable characters? Does your story have authentic emotion? Does your story have a significant moment? Does your story have specific details? Contact me for more information. Stop share. Okay. I would love some feedback on my presentation. Remember, I spent 6 or 7 hours. I really meant minutes. I spent 6 or 7 minutes creating that presentation, and I only thought about rehearsing it over and over again. But so give me some feedback. Tell me what landed with you, what didn't land with you. Just robotic, yeah. Good. What else?
That's like the best way to ever teach how to not do public speaking.
Yeah? What? Tell me why.
Well, first of all, the red screen blinded me.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you notice, Andy and I were both doing other things because there was nothing to keep us engaged to the screen because you were literally reading the screen.
I literally was just reading the screen. Yep. Absolutely. What else?
I got some good points though, Eric.
Yeah.
On the plus side.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come back to that. Actually, that's good. Thank you for mentioning that, Daniel. Anything else?
Very monotone, no enthusiasm, no changing in your voice tone or speed. Flat.
Absolutely. Just
flat.
completely flat. So there's a few takeaways from that presentation that I want us to discuss. First of all, Daniel, you're right. That's actually really good content. That's not my content. This is one of the books that I'm going to give you. I do have a visual aid, but I give visual aids at the very end. And in that visual aid, there's a list of books that you can read. That content is from Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall. And her 4 elements of a great story are phenomenal. The story does need identifiable characters, moments, details. Those are great. However, the way that I presented was not. Number one, you all mentioned that I read from the screen, and you all mentioned that I was monotone. Let me address those things. If it can be an email, then it isn't, you don't need a presentation, right? That's a standard rule of thumb. The same thing of any Zoom meeting like this. If I could just speak it into a podcast, then there's really no reason for us to log in at the same point. I should just record a podcast and send it off to you. What my intention is when speaking Zoom to Zoom, screen to screen, is to create an experience. So my first challenge to you is, as you are leading meetings, communication meetings, screen to screen, whether that is a group meeting like this or one-on-one, create an experience. That presentation that I gave wasn't an experience. It was one-dimensional. I want to go back to it briefly here. And one of the things that I followed was a standard structure. I don't want to shame the standard structure because we all learned it at some point, but the standard structure is usually why you are here, an intro section, and then content. Here's why I push back against that standard structure. Because brains crave novelty. We are used to let me tell you why you're here. We are used to, let me tell you a little bit about me. So our brains automatically kick out of information when we hear the same thing over and over again. That's why when I was introduced, I dove right into storytelling. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't introduce my concepts. I wanted you to understand where I was coming from. The research says that when you're speaking, you have about 4 seconds in person before the audience makes a judgment on you. And you have about 15 in a screen-to-screen communication method like Zoom. So if you spend your first 15 seconds talking about why they're here or over-introducing yourself, you're not finding that connecting point. The purpose of my story was to draw a parallel of something that occurred to me with the content that I was going with. Okay, here's some good news. Screen-to-screen communication, there are only some minor differences in communicating from Zoom and communicating in person. Tell me, what are some of the differences that you've noticed as you've attended Zoom webinars or Zoom meetings? What are some of the things that you have seen and experienced?
Multitask.
Yes, thank you. It's so much easier to multitask, right? So much easier. I could be checking my email right now. I could be doing this, and you could barely tell. And that's okay, right? There's no shame in that. We've all absolutely done it. I have multitasked during a meeting. I have turned my camera off and started folding laundry during a meeting. We're all doing that because we want to continue to be engaged. but we want to be moving forward. So much difficult to do that when we're face to face. If we were all in a room in a circle table sipping on coffee, it wouldn't look great if we were on our laptops doing this, right? And no shame, by the way, if you need to multitask and listen, go for it. Absolutely go for it. But the key takeaway that I want you to know is that in order to really impact your audience, in order to really hook them into your business, you have to be able to provide an experience so that they're pulled away from their multitasking and coming in. What's some of the other differences? This is what we call a long pause time. It's very uncomfortable, and I force myself to do it when I ask a question, because a lot of times speakers will ask a question, wait a second, and then be like, okay, I'll tell you the answer, because they start sweating like I do, but I just stand here. Yes.
Talking over people.
Say that again.
Talk over people. Nobody wants to interrupt the other person, so wait to see if somebody else is going to answer.
Great. That awkward like overlap, which I just did to you. That's very, very good. You bet. Charlene? Charlene, I think you're on mute if you're speaking. Oh, I still can't hear you, Charlene.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Another one.
Charlene.
Yeah, drop it in the chat. But that's another one, right? Technical difficulties are going to disrupt our communication. The best way to deal with technical difficulties is I just breathe through them. If we just, we all experience them, we all give each other grace. We can jam in a few more meetings in one day. Charlene, thank you so much for saying that. I actually really do appreciate some of the meetings that I've been having on Zoom. Instead of driving half an hour, sitting at a coffee shop, waiting around, having coffee, having a meeting, then driving another half an hour. And don't hear me wrong, those face-to-face interactions are phenomenal. And trainings like these are going to be phenomenal once they're back in person. But being able to knock out more meetings is definitely advantageous. I do want to address two more types of differences in this regard. One is nonverbal language. That is absolutely critical. Right now, we can have some sense of nonverbal language, but most of us are off camera and most of us are at our computers. So it's really hard to tell what is being experienced from the audience. That's difficult as a speaker, because as a speaker, well-trained speakers are trained to feel what is happening in the audience. There's a disruption in my ability to translate. Is my content landing with you all? Is my information landing with you all? That's really difficult. And a lot of times I've seen a lot of speakers honestly melt down because they're not getting that essential feedback. And then another one of the more critical differences in screen-to-screen communication is that before and after connecting point. We have a little bit of it. You know, sometimes people come in a little bit early on the Zoom call and stay a little bit later. And there is some connecting points, but there are more profound conversations that happen when we're hanging out at the coffee shop or we're hanging out in the conference room, and then we start to notice our nonverbal language and we find good connecting points, and we just kind of break off into a corner and really deeply connect and find meaningful training grounds that we can have, common grounds that we can have. So those are some of the minor differences in screen-to-screen communication. However, public speaking and communication skills are going to be the same whether they're virtual or whether they're in person. And I want to start by defining a few terms. Speaking, I think, has a poor definition right now. Because when I say that I'm going to be speaking to Fuse Chamber of Commerce in a learning environment, right now what I'm doing, I don't consider it speaking. What my intention here is teaching. And that's a completely different skill than speaking. I define speaking as you are experiencing a skill. When I give keynote speeches in front of live audiences, there's going to be a little bit of back and forth, but really I'm going to take the audience on a journey. I'm going to take them on a roller coaster journey through emotions, content, and all sorts of different images to get the brain to experience the skill that I am trying to communicate. Teaching, I am communicating a skill and giving you tools to be able to use that skill. And then finally, storytelling is showing how a skill happens in action. So again, speaking, teaching, and storytelling. Any of these can happen with any number of audiences. You can be speaking, teaching, and storytelling all in the same context, but it's important to understand what your primary goal is before you go into a communication setting. If you are just going to be speaking for 45 minutes and you're just going to be trying to give them that roller coaster of an experience, that's a different approach than teaching and building a skill. And in all three, speaking, teaching, and storytelling, again, brains crave novelty. So we continue to use the same formulas. Our brains are pattern-making machines. The reason why you get bored and so easily detached in all sorts of presentations is because I would argue that you have seen every presentation out there. It's just a little different wording, right? You've seen the same structure. So while consciously you're not thinking, oh, I've already seen this, I'm gonna do something else. Because the content and structure and the flow is so similar, that's why your brain is more easily ready to kick out. So I'm gonna teach you a pretty advanced skill here. I'm gonna copy it and paste it into the chat for now. And I'm going to also drop a visual aid into the chat as well. This is not my content. This is content from educational theory. One of the best training grounds that I have had as a public speaker and a public speaking coach is being a high school teacher for many years. There's nothing like standing in front of high schoolers and middle schoolers who don't want to be there and trying to engage them and enroll them into your content. Nothing like that hostile speaking environment. There's a lot of different teaching theories out there, and not one is better than the other, but this is the one that I land on the most. If you've heard of Bloom's taxonomy, this is very similar, but it has a little bit different of a twist. This is the chart that I use in all of my speaking engagements, speaking, teaching, and storytelling engagements. I want to be clear that this is not a ranking order, right? DOK, depth of knowledge level 1, is not better than depth of knowledge level 4. In fact, you cannot get to depth of knowledge level 4 until you understand depth of knowledge level number 1. So it's not a ranking order. What this is that it breaks apart the areas of the brain that learn and absorb. It breaks apart a skill. We'll go back to running. Yes, we as human beings are all designed to run. If I said, hey, everybody, your house is on fire, run out of the house, you would be able to move your body in a quick way as fast and as safely as possible out of the house. However, there are specific strategies and techniques behind running that are teachable in training programs. Just like there are in any content that you have and any business that you have, to be able to teach others what you do and how your product or business can support them. DOK level 1 is recall. Think of these as the basic definitions. If you remember any sort of high school class, this is when the professor put up the PowerPoint and you had to copy 17 and a half definitions, right? Here's the word, here's the definition. Here's the word, here's the definition. Here's the word, here's the definition. Usually DOK 1 gets a bad rap, right? Because you just think, okay, I just need to define it. I just need to look up what it means. However, I would argue that DOK1, recalling and defining individual concepts, is incredibly important as long as it's not done the old PowerPoint school style, right? If you take one specific word and define it and illustrate it, you're going to be better able to set up your audience for success. Once you define that, then you can go on to DOK skill level 2. So an example of skill level in DOK2 is comparing and contrasting two different elements. Once I have defined two different elements and I compare and contrast them, I'm able to show those differences. I did it earlier in comparing and contrasting running and speaking. Okay, I did it in comparing and contrasting speaking, teaching, and storytelling. DOK3 as a speaker is strategic thinking. So now you are formulating a plan with the audience on how you can best communicate your product or your service. And then finally, DOK extended thinking is where the audience creates something. I want to be clear, when you are speaking, teaching, or storytelling, very rarely, if ever, do you get to DOK4. Let me rephrase that. In a 1-hour session like this, we probably would not be able to get to DOK4. DOK4 is when you, as an audience member, create. So DOK level 4 would be, okay, now you all create a 15-minute presentation and give it to the rest of the group, and then we will evaluate the efficacy of that presentation. You are creating with the speaker or the teacher's guidance and content. DOK level 3 is usually where we end, where we pose the questions or the challenges to the audience so they can take that skill and extend it to their thinking. I want to pause here and I want to ask you what's coming up when I talk about the different levels of learning as it relates to speaking, teaching, and storytelling, and how have you applied those levels knowingly or unknowingly in your one-on-one conversations, in your team meetings, in your product pitches, in your marketing? What are some of the things that are connecting the dots for you? Again, another long teacher pause.
Well, I can't say that I've used these. This is my exposure to knowledge, but I use a wheel like this that's based on Bloom's taxonomy. And I have used that. My background is in teaching as well. I taught 12 years, 5th grade through 12th, so.
You know the hostile environment.
Oh no, mine was elective. Everyone wanted it.
Oh,
It's a little bit different. But in terms of, yeah, I can it's easy in a session like this to look at depth of knowledge 3 and say, okay, by the time we're done with this, I want my audience to be able to draw conclusions from the presentation that I'm making today. But yeah, definitely to get 4, that would have to be something we'd almost have to put outside of this presentation. Say, okay, when you leave here, I want to take these concepts that you've learned today and I want you to apply them to your so yeah, that would be a challenge to try to do it in a self-contained.
absolutely. It could be done in a series. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but in a 1-hour session, this is why 1-hour sessions are great introductions to content. I made this comment, and I don't know if it's quite as harsh as I said it out loud the other day, but if the entirety of your content and your message could fit in a 1-hour lunch and learn, then how much depth does that have, right? If I could teach you everything there is to know about public speaking and screen-to-screen communication in just 1 hour, then honestly, I'd be out of a job, because that's a pretty quick hour, right? That's all that you need. I could teach you how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in an hour. I can teach you very simple step-by-step instructions in an hour. But a skill level like business development, design, public speaking, running, CrossFit, that's not going to be absorbed in just 1 hour. What the intention of some of these learning opportunities is to launch you into the skill, to get you started. Again, I keep going back to running. If you don't run at all, if you've never run at all, this is getting you ready for your first mile. These are the first 5 steps that you got to take to make sure that you have a successful run, tomorrow morning on your first mile. Any other questions or comments on DOK levels? Again, this is pretty complex, and I'm throwing it out at you as a challenge, really, for a few reasons. Number one is, when I look at this depth of knowledge chart, I don't look at it as a ranking, as I mentioned before, and I don't always try to hit one of every one, right? Most of the time, my plans for speaking, teaching, and storytelling are weaving in and out. And the reason why I want to weave in and out of these knowledge levels is because the brain craves novelty. If I gave you that flat presentation, as I gave you about 15 minutes ago, if that was the case, you're going to be tuning me out really, really fast. The second reason why I really want to introduce this to you is to continue to iterate that speaking, teaching, and storytelling is a skill much more complex than sometimes people think it is. Most often, people think that speaking is a task. Oh, I have a presentation that I have to give in 2 weeks. So I prepare for it, I give it, and then that's it, and then I'm done. The problem is that it's very rarely rehearsed in front of a live studio audience, and it's very rarely given feedback. So another one of the takeaways that I'm going to give to you in my visual aid that I'll give at the end is that the best way to get better at any sort of speaking is, number one, speak often as you can, with this mentality in mind. Public speaking is every time you open your mouth and words come out. I want to say that again. Public speaking is every time that you open your mouth and words come out. So when you're in a Zoom meeting, when you're in client meetings, when you're in team meetings, when you're having a conversation with your partner, with your friend, that is all public speaking opportunities. Those are the times where you can eliminate some of the stumbles and fumbles, like I just did, some of the miswordings, and some of the indirect communication that haunts all of us. Okay, great. Questions before I move on? While you are preparing your speaking with this depth of knowledge, you're going to stumble and fumble quite a bit, meaning that you're going to try activities, you're going to ask a question, and then just awkwardly stand there with a cheesy smile while you wait for somebody to respond. That's okay. The best way to improve is to really have that sense of something is landing, something is not landing. I want to transition and give you some really practical tips for screen-to-screen communication and the reasoning behind those tips. One is, I don't use visual aids. I don't use a PowerPoint. I very rarely use a PowerPoint when I'm in person speaking. I just don't do it. There's a few reasons why. First is, it's usually a crutch. It's usually a second podium. If you remember what podiums look like, we're standing behind here. I don't like using a podium either because most of the time it's blocking you off from the audience, and most speakers are holding on to dear life. Like, oh my God, please hold on, right? This language blocks you off. It's a safety zone for you. Being open and vulnerable is much more difficult for a speaker, but it is also more impactful for the audience. A visual aid is another safety net. It detracts attention from you and your verbal message, and it says, hey, look over there, don't look at me. Let me be clear. There are times where you want to say, hey, look over there, don't look at me, right? That's why I dropped the DOK chart into the chat. Is sometimes the way that you are communicating your content level is going to be better expressed by visual aid. The word aid says it all. It should aid in your presentation. It shouldn't be your presentation. So I don't use, very rarely do I use visual aids, and I specifically don't use visual aids in a Zoom meeting. I want to say that again. I do not use visual aids in a Zoom meeting, ever. Here's why. I'm going to show you by using a visual aid. When I put this up, and let's just say that this was not meaningful content, it was just a slide, the about me slide with a picture of me saying I'm a speaker, educator, and coach. Here's what happens. Not only is my content much larger, but me and my message shrank, right? So my face is already smaller. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if I want people to understand my content here. And it's not really that I really want you all to look at my face and how I haven't gotten my hair cut and all of my features. But because we are separated, because we are not in the same room and interpreting our body language, I get to be much more expressive with you all. You connect with me better if I am expressing more with my hands and with my facial expressions. If I use a visual aid, that's automatically detracting from what I'm intending to do. On the same note is, if you notice, I am overplaying my facial expressions. I do it in every Zoom meeting possible, especially in a teaching environment. I'm not usually this, if you were right in front of me, if you were where my camera was, I wouldn't be speaking this expressively. In fact, it feels a little bit uncomfortable to do that. But I do that to, it's like turning up the volume on your nonverbal cues so that you're better able to relate and connect to me. I'm gonna do 2 subpoints on that. Number 1, when you feel silly, when you feel uncomfortable doing this, when you feel uncomfortable overdoing your facial expressions and over communicating, that's a really good thing. The rule of thumb that I have is the more uncomfortable you feel, the better it looks. I want to say that again. The more uncomfortable you feel, the better it looks to an audience. I'll break that down even more. Whenever there is a speaking or teaching opportunity, whenever you are speaking or teaching, there is a price that is paid. Somebody pays a price for the content. If you play it yourself safe, hide behind a podium, hide behind a PowerPoint, then the audience has the role and has the job of trying to interpret what your message is and what your intention is. So as an audience member, you have to think, what is he saying? Why is he saying that? The brain is concentrating too much on those particular details and not enough on the actual message. So if I, who am generally reserved and shy and all of those different things, if I pay the price of feeling a little bit foolish by overemphasizing my facial expressions, if I slow my pace down, even though I really, really like to talk less fast because I have a lot of energy and I move around and I bounce around a lot and I really like talking much more faster than I actually am. If I slow myself down as much as possible so that I am speaking just slightly under my speaking rate, you're going to be able to connect much better to my content. I'm willing to pay the prices of looking foolish and being wrong and not quite feeling comfortable so that you have that benefit. What are your reactions to that? How often do you feel uncomfortable in your speaking? Or let me, go ahead, Andy. Annie, go ahead, Annie.
Often.
Tell me why, Annie. Oh, you're still on mute.
Here we go. I am Italian. I talk with my hands, and I feel like it's super distracting unless you're the presenter. So I'm like, jazz hands, and then my virtual background makes them like go away.
Right.
And Andy over here, it's like, oh look, I have no hands. I also just, I don't know. I get off on a tangent, and it just happens, and then I feel really kind of weird. And I do it every week.
Why do you feel weird going on a tangent?
Because I'm weird. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt that literally says, it's fine, I'm fine, everything is fine, because that's, I have severe anxiety. So for me, when I get off on a tangent, I feel like, oh my God, nobody's benefiting from this. Shut up. And then it just like awkwardly stops.
Interesting. Okay, I hear that anxiety. I totally hear that anxiety, and I feel a lot of different levels of anxiety as well. And the reason why we trail off is because we're anxious about our message landing. Is my message landing? I know for me, I switch gears when I feel like the audience isn't listening. And then when I still feel like they're not listening, I switch gears again. And then all of a sudden I'm talking about something that is not relevant to that. That's thank you, Annie, for that, a vulnerable share. That's one of the reasons why it's so critical to practice in front of an audience and get feedback, because a lot of times when I get feedback, people will tell me that tangent didn't make sense. That tangent didn't connect. And I'm able to rehearse over and over and over again. Go ahead, Charlene. Oh, we still can't hear you. She's going to put it in the chat. We need Annie to feel more comfortable speaking. She has so much social media knowledge our members could use in a social media series. Yeah, absolutely, Annie. Absolutely. The way that I describe...
She does this to me because she knows that I was raised by 2 teachers. And so there is like this innate need to teach people what I do, but then I'm like, nobody wants to hear it from me.
Interesting. Why do you feel like nobody wants to hear it from you?
I don't know. Imposter syndrome? How many people raise your hand if you experience imposter syndrome?
Of course, we all experience imposter syndrome. Absolutely, we do. Here's the cure for imposter syndrome, is that not everybody has heard your message. Even if they've heard your message, they've never heard it from you. Even if they've heard your message and they've heard it from you, they have never heard your message heard from you today. So if I give the exact same presentation 6 months from now, I will have grown in my personal and professional life. This presentation, there you go, I love it, steal like an artist. This presentation will have changed and transformed. That's how I get over the imposter syndrome, is that I know that the me of today has something significant to speak and teach to others. Charlene, why is it the more uncomfortable you feel, the better? Thank you. The more uncomfortable you feel, the better it looks, because 1, you're paying the price of feeling uncomfortable. And 2, when you are hiding behind whatever tactic that you use to hide, an audience innately knows that. For example, think about my PowerPoint presentation on storytelling skills. When I was talking like this and I was using a PowerPoint presentation, this was me hiding. I was totally comfortable. I mean, trust me, that was easy to do, right? Reading off a PowerPoint is super, super easy. And projecting a PowerPoint to the full screen so that nobody really sees me, that's even easier, but it does not land well. I assure you, if that was the way that I spoke for 45 minutes in front of a PowerPoint, most of you would be not happy with the hour that you spent here, right? You would want much more engagement. So you get to pay the price of feeling uncomfortable. Ooh, Daniel, everything that needs to be said has already been said, but since no one was listening, everything must be said again. That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Really, really well done there. Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns about that anxiety or that uncomfortable feeling that you get? I want to wrap up in two ways. Number one is I'm going to drop my my visual aid into the chat. This is a bit of the recap of what we talked about. So there's some virtual differences, the types of speaking, depth of knowledge. Visual aids distract from facial expressions. Facial expressions must be over top. Brains crave novelty and organization. There's some reading recommendations for you there. These are hysterical books. They're really, really great. I already showed you Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall. Very, very powerful, very, very funny. The next one is Talk Like Ted. One of the best public speaking books I've ever read. If I were still teaching collegiate speech, this would be my textbook and this would be my only textbook. This says it all. And then finally, Teach Like a Pirate. This is an educational book, but this is one of the most meaningful books that I have ever found in speaking and teaching. And the argument is really teach completely unashamed of who you are and teach completely in unexpected ways. When you do that, you are going to reach your audiences significantly better because they're not expecting the learning that is occurring in their brains. Finally, the best way to improve your speaking is speak often. Speak often in front of an audience. Doesn't matter how large the audience is. It can be an audience of one. It sounds very uncomfortable, but I'm telling you, so many people improve by getting public speaking buddies or public speaking groups. If you just get one or two people that you say, hey, I just want to record this 2-minute presentation that I'm going to give to my friends. I just need to say it out loud. Will you watch it and give me feedback? That's all you have to do. In my coaching business, I use the app Marco Polo. I'll put that in the chat as well. It is a free app. There is a paid version, but you don't need all the bells and whistles. But Marco Polo is a video messaging app. So my clients will record a 1 to 2 minute speech, and then I will record a 1 to 2 minute response to that. If you just get a bunch of your buddies in a Marco Polo group and start speaking and start using speaking prompts as an example, that's going to dramatically improve your speaking because you're speaking to people. I'm a brilliant athlete in my head. I'm like super strong in my head. I'm like really fast in my head. And then I get to the gym and I'm like, oh, I can't lift that. I can't go that far. That's really, really difficult, right? It's the same thing with speaking. In our head, we're like, oh, I'm going to kill it. I'm so brilliant and funny and amazing. And then when the words come out of your mouth, you think, oh, no, that didn't land the way I wanted it to. And when I speak, I always ask for feedback, okay? I send all my recordings to my own coaches so that I understand what landed, what didn't land, what I could improve on. So ask for feedback. This is the epitome of discomfort. The hardest thing that my coaches tell me are the things that I already knew, right? If I send them a video and I think, ah, gosh, during that speech, I felt a little disorganized. I felt like I was stumbling a little bit too much and I was definitely too fast. And when my coaches come back and say, hey, Erik, you were disorganized, you were stumbling a bit too much and you were really fast. Ugh, it hurts. It hurts because I wanted to perform well in that speech and I already knew what I didn't need. I already knew what I fell short on. So it is difficult to request feedback. It is difficult to receive feedback, but the more you do that, the better you will get. Again, it's just like a workout. It doesn't always feel great in the moment, but boy, does it pay off. Okay. The very end, there's a way to contact me if you want some more speaking tips, if you want some speaking exercises. I have a free Facebook group where I just continually post about speaking tips and speaking exercises and all of the different elements of what I do. So feel free to join that. What questions can I answer before I leave on my last lesson? This is a long pause.
What are your tips for putting up with the long pauses?
Breathe. I literally count my breaths. I will count to 5 deep, long breaths. And after 5 long breaths, if there's still nothing out there, then what I do usually is I will reframe the question. Because it might not be that the audience is thinking. It might be that I didn't communicate effectively. Great
that
question.
was my next question. At what point do you ask if they understood?
Yeah, I would wait about 5 deep breaths. And instead of asking, did you understand that? My go-to question is, I will call on someone. I'll say, Andy, can you tell me what it is that I asked? Like, I just want to clarify. And so when you tell me what I asked, then I can say, that I can see why we're confused. Let me re-clarify. It's a great question. What else? Any other questions? Okay, I want to end with this question. Where does public speaking land on national rankings of fear? Does anybody know?
Somewhere above spiders.
Somewhere above spiders.
Number 1 or number 2?
Good, good. We're saying number 1, number 2.
Abby says top fear.
Top fear. So one of my clients sent me a ranking list recently, and it was ranked number 4. Public speaking was the number 4 fear in the United States, and I forgot what the top 3 was. It was a little bit disappointing because I used to be able to say public speaking is the top fear in America. And then I did a little bit of digging into that website and that research center. And the link that she sent me was from 2018, and I wanted something more. I wanted something more recent. Do you know where public speaking lands in 2020? It went from 4th to 56th. 4th to 56th. There's a lot of reasons that I have, a lot of theories that I have as to why this fear dropped dramatically. Number 1, there's a lot to fear in 2020. There's just a lot of things that are on our minds much more than public speaking. Number 2, and the one that I fear the most, people don't recognize public speaking as a fear because they are finding ways to avoid public speaking. And because they're finding ways to avoid public speaking, they're finding effective ways to hide themselves. That's what's most concerning to me, is that we're hiding our individuality, we're hiding our knowledge, we're hiding our creativity, we're hiding our experiences, we're hiding our knowledge because we fear that when we speak those out, they may get rejected. And honestly, they may, right? There might be people in this Zoom call who say, no, that doesn't land. I don't get it. It doesn't matter. And that's okay. That's totally okay. What's not okay for me in context of public speaking is not stepping into that arena and showcasing who you are. So my encouragement, my plea, my challenge to you all is get messy with your public speaking. Pay the prices that it takes to be uncomfortable in front of a stage, no matter what that stage looks like. And share your ideas, your product, your story as often as possible so that you can build up the community around you and that you can continue to knock the ranking down of public speaking for the right reasons. Thank you all so very much. I really appreciate your time. I'll drop my email address in the chat as well in case you have any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. I just have to, Mei Lee is encouraging you. She's crediting you publicly so dramatically. Coaches like you, she says.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for your work. Well, everyone, hope that you enjoyed the session with Erik. So let's see it 1 through 5 presentation today. And Erik, thank you for being with us today. I know that I got out of this, and it certainly cast me back to times when I had in front of how I structure my presentations, I think. So thank you very much. So everyone, go forward. We start to wrap up. Can you just throw out another plea again that if you have a topic you'd like to share on Feed Your Mind, please reach out. Let me know that you could be of a benefit to other members of the, and anything from maybe a pet passion project to something that is part of your, so feel free to me. Watch for other events up through the chamber. Check out the event calendar. Hope to see you in the future. Everyone, thanks again, Erik.
Bye. Thank you.
Media sponsor today.
Thank you.
Thank you.